Let me touch on a couple of minor things, and then we'll take calls for the rest of the time.
Folks online, just hang on real quick. We'll get right back.
Another example I wanted to bring up of the way Chuck Colson sort of selects the parts of the truth that he likes is when he talks about slavery, and he talks about how many Christians were involved in the abolition movement, which, again, is true, but it's not the whole story. Colson glosses over the Christian role in preserving the institution of slavery when he says, it's true that some Christians have been hypocritical about slavery, condoning it for too long, and the record of the church is not without blemish, blah, blah, blah. No. Christians haven't been hypocritical about slavery. They've just done what their Bible says.
Yep.
In fact, if I can give an example, I looked up a quote from 1856. A guy named Reverend Thomas Stringfellow, a Baptist minister from Culpeper County in Virginia, wrote an essay called A Scriptural View of Slavery. He said, quote, Jesus Christ recognized this institution as one that was lawful among men, and regulated its relative duties. I affirm then, first, and no man denies, that Jesus Christ has not abolished slavery by a prohibitory command, and second, I affirm he has introduced no new moral principle which can work its destruction.
Hey, you know what? He's right.
Yeah.
The Bible endorses slavery, even tells you how much to pay for certain slaves, how long you can keep them, and how you go about marking them by holding their ear up to the door and driving a stake through it.
The Old Testament is a lot more enthusiastic about slavery, certainly. I mean, they actually tell you who you should sell into slaves and who you should take for slaves, and Jesus doesn't do any of that. But just like this reverend says, he never actually said, no, that one is bad. I mean, it's not like the God of both the Old and New Testaments was shy about telling people what he thought was bad.
Well, and Jesus flatly said, according to what's in the New Testament, slaves obey your masters. The new generation of Christians living in a world where slavery has now rightfully been abolished get this kind of anachronistic view of the New Testament, and they spin it to say what they now understand.
Right.
And so that passage about slaves obey your masters becomes, well, he was talking about, servants, not people who were actually owned. No, I'd say this, obedience, not really that important. If you're a servant, you've got a job to do, you do it, and if your master, which is a really odd word to use with a servant, orders you to do something, you're a free person and you don't have to obey. There's no reason why the supposed loving God of the universe would order servants to obey the people that are employing them. That's insane. That's spin. It's anachronistic. Your Bible supports slavery, never denounces it. Mm-hmm. Don't pretend like it does. You're a liar.
And so what Chuck Colson considers the truth of Christianity, and by the way, I also have a real problem with the way he mixes up the idea of objective truth about the world with truth about values. Because, I mean, values actually need a valuer to mean something. I mean, they are respective to various people. We can come to a consensus on society values, and we have, one of them being slavery is bad, which is something the Bible never said. But we can't say that, a mass murderer or a lion particularly cares about human life. We can only say we value human life. That guy doesn't, but we're entitled to do something about it.
Right. There's also the silly moral things that religion, especially puritanical religion, has always been kind of. I mean, you've got Muslims who have their women wear, completely covered head to toe type things, and the hemline on a skirt, even in the United States, what is moral or immoral has gradually climbed, and I'm in favor of that.
Woohoo!
But
Time was
crazy.
when a bit of stocking was seen as something shocking.
Yes.
But now, God knows, anything goes.
But it strikes me as really odd because, I mean, just looking at, for example, my parents, who are very good people. I love them dearly. They are conservative, fundamentalist Christians with good, in quote marks, values. They will, I've heard my mom complain about what girls these days are wearing. And yet, oddly enough, I've seen pictures of my mom in surprisingly short miniskirts when she was dating my dad.
Did you have to wash your eyes?
No. No, I wasn't looking at her in any sense like that. My mom was beautiful, still is. But it's slightly changed, and what somebody views as immoral is basically, seems to me, anything that goes slightly beyond what you were comfortable with. I was comfortable with skirts up to here, and this girl's gone a little too far, so she's immoral. So the cutoff line is whatever your personal limits are. So let's just admit that and quit pretending that there's some ultimate, divinely commanded moral compass installed in each one of you so that you are the decider on what is right and wrong and ethical. It's crazy stuff.
Well, my point in bringing up this thing about slavery is that Chuck Colson and I both agree that not everything is subjective. But his solution to making sure that things are not subjective is to just apply a little faith to it. I mean, that's what the book is called, The Faith. And what I'm saying to him is that Reverend Thomas Stringfellow's faith was every bit as strong as Chuck Colson's faith. And I think that his conviction that slavery was supported by the Bible was no less sincere than Chuck Colson's belief that it was the Bible and nothing else that inspired people to get rid of slavery. And so I find faith essentially a worthless way to make decisions. I'm not saying, I mean, we said earlier in the show that maybe a little bit of faith is sometimes healthy for people, the way that blogging is healthy for people. But that doesn't mean that it gives you correct answers about anything, just like I've seen some really wrong blogs.
Yeah. I think the key thing there is that, while we were freely willing to admit that there may be some benefit, what I would say is that it isn't a benefit, and nobody's been able to give an example of a benefit, a real, tangible benefit, that can only be achieved by religion.
Well, Chuck Colson tries pretty hard in the second half of the book, so
Does
you're
he
free
succeed?
Well, I don't think so.
Well,
but
then he fails, just like the rest of them. Give me an example of a real benefit that can only be achieved through religious means. That can only be there's a secular equivalent for all of those things. And I think my point, if I have one in this area, is that faith is not only useless, but it distracts you from finding out what the real cause of that benefit is. If we were to discover through scientific study that what's really happening when you pray is that your brain is entering a particular state that allows you to focus, that separates the emotional aspects of your mind from the reasoning aspects of your mind, congratulations. Now we've actually discovered something about how the brain really works. And this may be a discovery that we can put into practical use. And the only thing that may be preventing us from finding this is this appeal to mystery and magic that, we don't want to go poking around in what happens in the brain when we're praying because that's when God's talking to us. Okay, whatever.
By the way, if you want to keep up with the ongoing saga about this book, feel free to stop by atheistexperience.blogspot.com, and if you look on the side, there's a list of tags. One of them is Chuck Colson, so you click on that and you'll see every post written recently that relates to this saga. So you'll probably see letters emerging from me and Martin within a few weeks. Yeah. So let's take some calls.